These are England's moorlands, vast highland plains of heather and bracken with damp, peaty soils. Streams meander their way through this landscape down to areas of upland meadows where grasses and small plants are plentiful. A truly wild and untouched landscape, so you might think. But with the intensification of farming in the 19th and 20th century, peat bogs were drained and trees were cut down. This made way for pasture, land perfect for grazing livestock. And slowly but surely, England's moorlands have reduced in size and become fragmented.
85% of England's heathland has been lost in the past 150 years. Trees have been unable to regenerate and seeding plants have been unable to mature due to overgrazing from a sea of sheep. The wildlife that called our moorlands home are long gone. Areas of upland pasture and moorland have been fenced off from sheep and deer, protecting the land from overgrazing. Trees have begun to reappear and there is an abundance of food being grown from an increasingly biodiverse habitat. Nature is making a return. Groups and individuals across the country are working together to bring back wildlife, restoring these habitats to their former beauty. But species don't just appear, particularly the endangered ones. So what about when natural recolonisation cannot occur? Well, that's where reintroductions are needed, and that's exactly the intention with the Twite Conservation Project.
So this is the twite, also known as the rockfinch, pennine finch or mountain linnet. A tiny little bird found across northern Europe, inhabiting the fringes of moorland. Twites are a granivorous species, so their diet consists primarily of small seeds foraged from plants. These are plants such as dandelions, nettles, thistle, grasses and common sorrel. They've also been found to eat heather flower and very occasionally small insects and aphids. They're a sociable species, so they're always found in multiples. In the spring and summer months, they nest in loose colonies, where one single male may breed with multiple females throughout a breeding season. In the winter, large flocks of twites congregate and migrate south to lowland or coastal salt marshes in search of food in less harsh weather. They have quite unique breeding habits for a finch. They nest at ground level amongst bracken or heather, small, dense shrubs, or in cliff faces.
Now there are multiple variants of twite, but the subspecies that we're interested in, native to the British Isles, are known as the pipilands.
Research has shown that there is no gene flow between the European subspecies Flavirostris and our native pipilands. This means that our endemic subspecies of twite is functionally extinct.
Tens of thousands of these birds were found in flocks right across the UK, but now they're all but extinct.
Tiny thing, it used to be called the rockfinch. It's a wee bird called a twite. And if you've been on the Solway in the 1990s, you'd have seen flocks of thousands. If you've been in the Solway in 2000, you'd have seen flocks of hundreds. At the beginning of 2023, they're saying, we think there's 3 pairs left. And then they phoned the other day and said, we surveyed and we just don't think there's anything left anymore. So
I was talking to a person the other day who's monitoring the last remaining population in England, and he said a few have been bred this year. It could take the total to 15 birds.
In conservation genetics, the minimum viable population is 50 individuals. This prevents inbreeding depression. But sadly, with such low numbers remaining in the wild, this just isn't possible, and we must intervene. It's looking like the answer to save the British twite might be a reintroduction. That's why I've teamed up with a group of species reintroduction experts, Derek Gow, the Keep It Wild Trust, and a number of private investors. We're going to attempt to save the British twite from extinction, so here's the plan. So step one, we already have captive bred twites here at Aviary thanks to the decades of dedication from aviculturalists. Step two, in order to succeed, we must breed these birds in significantly large quantities. Almost all the knowledge we have on their breeding preferences, behaviour and requirements is once again thanks to the decades of experience from aviculturalists. Step three, the stock we have now are used to breeding in small aviaries, having their food served to them in a dish, and are not used to interactions with predators. We must convert them back into a wild type bird that likes to breed on areas of moorland, knows how to forage for their food, and is prepared for action when faced with a predator. Step 4. We already have some deceased birds in a lab right now having their mitochondrial DNA tested to determine their origins and what subspecies they are. Step 5. In 5 to 10 years time, we hope to have received reintroduction licenses from the relevant authorities and begin our first reintroductions at a number of private estates, but more on that to come in future. So now let's take a look at how the first year of the Twite Conservation Project has unfolded.
The flock arrived in winter when the snow was falling and the days were short. Our founding population of 12 individuals would begin the project in the harshest of conditions. Replicating their wild behaviour, we housed them in a mixed-sex group in a small, naturalistic aviary. They had access to a variety of natural perches to promote exercise and fake Christmas tree, acting as foliage for roosting. Even though the temperatures were below zero, that didn't stop them from taking a bath. For a finch of only weighing 15 grams, they're tough little creatures. As the spring approached and temperatures increased, they began to come into breeding condition. Their fitness increased massively by offering natural forage such as green millet and nettles. They would spend hours working their way around the forage, collecting the tiny little seeds inside. This is when I began to notice pair bonds beginning to form. Spring quickly arrived, and at the beginning of April, the flock were divided into 6 pairs, each with their partners they had selected themselves over winter. Now it was time to breed. Over the weeks that followed, the hens began inspecting suitable sites to rear their young. Nests began construction from a mix of materials including moss, coconut fibre, hay and sisal. After weeks of courtship displays and preparation, the first eggs finally began to appear. The turn of May brought new life. The first twite began to emerge from its shell after only 11 days of incubation. More soon followed, and before we knew it, we had multiple nests of chicks being reared. When the chicks reached 5 days old, we put closed rings on their legs. This was important evidence to prove the birds were captive bred and to help form a family tree for future use. They grew quickly, and Mum and Dad had a job of keeping up with their ever-growing appetites. As the nests began to get more crowded, it was time to take the plunge and explore life outside. Within days, the now juvenile twites found their wings and began perching alongside their parents. This was very beneficial for them, as they could now chase their parents for food. As they approached 1 month old, they learnt how to feed themselves, and as they did, their parents returned to nest for another clutch.
It was at this point, however, that several problems began to arise. 5 out of the 6 hens were young birds, meaning that this was their first ever breeding season. This inexperience showed and led to several clutches of infertile eggs or abandoned nests. That being said, that problem should alleviate itself next year. The climate also didn't help, because we've had very little of a summer here in the UK. Because of inconsistent temperatures, varying weather conditions and lower intensity of sunlight, it hasn't allowed the bird's breeding condition to reach its full potential, which encourages to go on and have multiple clutches of eggs within a breeding season. With that being said, we did manage to achieve a milestone or 2 later in the breeding season.
2 of the hens built natural nests as they would in the wild. 1 hen had a clutch in a nest bowl on the floor and reared 6 chicks in it. Another hen built a freestanding nest in a small shrub about 12 inches off the floor. She reared 2 chicks in that nest. Both are major milestones in allowing the bird's natural instincts to fully take over as we look to convert them back into wild birds for eventual release in several generations' time.
Of course, we only had 6 pairs here this breeding season, which is nowhere near the total amount we're going to need for this project in its entirety, not to mention the fact that we over doubled our captive population here just this season. We don't have the capacity, and the project will expand. So that's why we're currently building a brand new conservation breeding facility for many different species of endangered British birds, including the twites, right here in Derbyshire. That's a place I can focus my efforts into rewilding and conservation. So if you would like to support the Twite Conservation Project and all our other projects in the future, then please visit the Keep It Wild Trust website via the link in the description. Like and share this video to as many people as you possibly can, and subscribe to the channel down below. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.